And joining us is Professor Manoj Pant. He is an economist and a former director of the IIFT. If I may start by asking you, Professor, how should India navigate its way around the Trump tariffs?
Well, there are only two ways of doing it. Let's be clear, the impact is going to be a little severe on our textiles in few sectors. Because, you go from close to 10-12% to 50%, no country in the world produces again. But I think the navigation is possible. Maybe we should have started earlier getting the signals from his first time. But navigation has to be through the new EUs. And there are the two ways. It is not just what the government could do, what the producers can do is also important. They have very large margin in the US market. I'm sure they can cut some margins and move to alternative markets. We're looking at EU, we're looking at UAE, we're looking at UK, and also the domestic market. So at least in these two areas, garments and leather go to be two major affected items, and gems and jewelry. Domestic market plus switching is the way to go. The government can only enable this. Government can't subsidize everything. Not possible. It violates global rules. But government give some help in terms of, let's say, GST initiatives. That's what the government can do. But yes, there is a way of switching on. It has to be done very quickly. See, this season is gone because you've already bought everything. Most producers have already bought or sold whatever they're selling for the market. The issue is what we do next summer. So that we have some time. It's important to quickly find alternative suppliers. It is, even the bigger producer, we don't need to worry about. They will switch their production to countries like Bangladesh and other places. But it's the small producers within India who are going to lose because they used to rely on the exports. They are the ones who need to be helped for alternative markets.
One issue, Professor, that the US has repeatedly cited as a pretext or excuse or reason for imposing penalties on India by way of tariffs is India's purchase of Russian crude. Now, what explains this misinformation or disinformation spread by the US about India's oil purchases from Russia?
Well, you see, this is all rubbish. You see, they are applying tariffs on India under Section 232, which allows the US to put sanctions on national security grounds. It has got to show that there's some national security issue. Now, how the US has a national security issue vis-a-vis Ukraine, they are not fighting Russia. It's the Ukraine which is fighting Russia. I don't understand. It's a very personal thing, and I don't think we should get into that. But let me tell you much more than that. There is a major trade policy shift. It's not just Mr. Trump. It's his circle of advisors, Peter Navarro, who's the main culprit, and the other is a guy called Jameson Greer, who is presently the US Trade Representative. These guys are known to be saying that they want to upend the whole world system, which is established in the WTO, because they think it discriminates against India. So that's the general reasons why these tariffs are being applied everywhere. There is a basic philosophy that the US must become protectionist and keep markets in. Now, he needed something. It's well known now, why should I repeat? It sounds so silly, right, on national TV. To say there's a guy who wants to get Nobel Prize, he thinks if someone can say he solved these war problems, what he so-called prospective nuclear war between India and Pakistan, never going to ever come near that also. He would get some points in Nobel Prize. I mean, what do you do if a policy is so personal? There's nothing you can do. You can't campaign against it. You can't argue against it. What can you do except say, okay, fine, we grin and bear it. We look for resources. But I do believe over the next year, we've got a year to work it out, some sense will go into his head. If not from India, it won't go from India. India should not try to do anything. I just go about our usual business. I think his own establishment is quite embarrassed by what is happening. And there we might see, I personally think India should prepare for negotiation with the US on a USTA trade FTA, which will happen at some time or the other, and look for commodity-wise exceptions, where for these couple of commodities we can look at tariff exceptions within an FTA, which can be given to developing countries. On many items, of course, they are not covered in these sanctions, like pharma, then, for example, oil exports. Then also, for example, textile, leather garments. These are not covered under don't come under sanctions. So a large part of exports don't, but the MSMEs are the ones who are likely to be impacted for no fault but the what can I call it? The arrogance of one single guy, which is no economic basis. So what can I argue? There's no economics behind it, right?
Indeed. So you made a number of interesting points there, Professor. For one, you say that this could be more political and personal than anything else. Number one. Number two, you say the onus clearly is on Washington, D.C. to resolve this issue because it created it in the first place. And last but not the least, you say that a bilateral trade treaty could be a way out. Now, talking about FTAs, Professor, are free trade agreements the way forward to overcome some of these economic turbulence that the world is passing through? India is negotiating, for instance, an FTA with the EU and, as you say, the US.
Yes, you see what, and also with UK. So you see what happens. FTA is a way of carrying trade forward in other means. You also bring investment. You look at other relations. You look at non-tariff barriers. You go much beyond the simple trade agreement. That's the way what FTAs are. Now, when we come with USA, instead of telling not to do something which he's doing for personal, now he does everything for personal reasons. Forget about us. He's after Obama, because he thinks Obama prevented a report which said that the Russians did not affect the next thing. So you can't do anything with the. So it's the personal part you can't do anything. That's his problem.
Okay.
But the political part of it can be sorted out through an FTA, and maybe you know what to do. Everyone's doing it. Maybe you got to feed this guy's ego a bit, and maybe at some point in time we can turn and say, "Oh, we are very thrilled that Mr. Trump has hopefully one day solved the Ukraine crisis." Well, that's the kind of thing he looks for. But let me tell you, there is no point arguing about this 25%. It is purely personal. It is not even political. It's not going to go away as long as he remains where he is.
And very quickly, Professor, before we wrap up this discussion, do you think better sense will prevail and the Trump government will quickly back off?
I think so, because within the Trump administration, there are, except leaving these few, what should I call them? Well, not lunatics, but weird administrative guys like Navarro and Greer and maybe a few and certain others. The others do believe that, one should not endanger international negotiations on geopolitics, right?
Right.
Which has taken a long time. It's taken the last 10, 12 years to establish these. Began with the nuclear agreement 2017, continued by the present government. You can't endanger them with a small thing like tariffs on textiles. I mean, it's quite silly. It's so silly one doesn't even know how to talk about it. So I think better sense will prevail over time. At the moment, it doesn't affect us because the textile garment guys have already made their sales for the coming winter. It's the next summer preparations.
Indeed. Indeed, as you correctly say, Professor Pant, it's easy to wreck something that you build, which takes years on end to build and create in the first place. I'll stop it there and thank you once again for joining us and sharing your perspectives, interesting at that, with our viewers around the world. Thank you.